Hello and welcome to my review of Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell. Cranford was first published as a novel in 1853, having been published in serial form over the previous 2 years in the Dickens-conducted periodical Household Words. The Cage at Cranford, included in most editions, including mine, was published in 1864 in another Dickens-related periodical all the year round. Discussions of the plot will necessarily be limited by virtue of the fact it doesn't really have one, nor was it intended to have one particularly, the monthly format of Household Words lending itself more to a series of shorts. The first 2 chapters cover the introduction of Cranford as in the hands of the Amazons, the largely matriarchal society that makes up the population of the small town of the title. Men are largely absent, working in the local and more industrial city of Drumble, and the women were something of an enigma even back then, clinging largely to tradition and a way of life that our narrator's father calls simple. As in North and South, you have this dichotomy of modern city, sleepward backward village, but here the focus is reversed, concentrating almost entirely on the village. Nowhere is this opposition more clearly stated than in the matriarchal Miss Jenkins arguing with the retired Captain Brown on the various merits of the contemporary ironic Boz, who he favours, versus the traditional work of Dr. Johnson favoured by her. There are other aspects, such as the unfortunate captain being killed on the train line. That railway comes close but not actually to Cranford is also significant, and is also a hindrance to the visiting magician Signor Brunoni later on. As the chapters roll along, the focus switches mainly to Miss Matty, significantly unable to truly function in either the traditional society or the modern one. Interestingly, for a Gaskell novel, it would be hard to argue that this is purely down to gender, though there are aspects of that as you'd expect. Miss Matty was repressed rather than oppressed, and mostly by her own sister, Miss Jenkins. Of course, Victorian society was undeniably patriarchal, and this is made explicit by the various scrapes the women find themselves in that are only resolvable by occasional male interventions. One example of this is Mary's father being required to rubber stamp the solution to Miss Matty's money problems, even though his daughter, among others, has already resolved them. Observed through the narrator's sardonic but compassionate eye, the story of her mischievous, now missing brother and her aborted romance with Mrs. Holbrook all serve to make Miss Matty an emotive and engaging character. The interplay among this society, the various tiers of it, and the games that they play in order to hide them, as well as the way they ruthlessly expose them when decorum dictates, is often quite comical. The society was delightfully anachronistic, even in Gaskell's own time, and it bears a strange sort of socialism. Displays of wealth are vulgar, yet these are upper-class women, so that they might actually do work is considered even worse. Even though we are dealing exclusively with the upper class here, the richest among them strive to appear no richer than the poorest among them. They all try to appear equal, even though their society is highly stratospheric, and one where even the number of servants or lack of them is quite telling. Nowhere is this false equality more explicit than in the refreshments provided at the various gatherings. Food must be simple and slight. A feast would be unthinkable. The richest among them must provide simple basic food and drink within the means of the poorest. They are all equal, but not the servants, obviously. All of this Gaskell recounts in a way that lovingly acknowledges its silliness, but it seems nonetheless plausible for it. Partly this is down to a really shrewd eye for character, and we see this on page 105, where Miss Matty, determined to appear properly dressed for 2 different groups of visitors at once, finds herself absently wearing 2 caps on her head. Gaskell writes the whole thing with a gentle ease, maintaining an engaging conversational tone that is both emotive and astute. On page 119, when Miss Pole is determined to let bygones be bygones with one of the other ladies who has offended most of the Cranford society, she wants to attend their party because Miss Pole, in addition to her delicacies of feeling, possessed a very smart cap which she was anxious to show off to an admiring world. Through the eyes of her narrator, Mary Smith, Gaskell affectionately pokes fun at the people of Cranford. Smith is undeniably more modern and capable than Miss Matty, much more a woman of the modern world than of Cranford, yet so pervasive is this easygoing if somewhat oddball attitude, she is prone to occasional Cranfordisms herself. After relating the story of a gentleman who took the collapse of a bank he had invested in with admirable stoicism, but fretted about the wasted paper in his now useless bank book, she recounts her own oddly familiar idiosyncrasy. To me, an India rubber ring is a precious treasure. I have one which is not new, one that I picked up off the floor nearly 6 years ago. I have really tried to use it, but my heart failed me, and I could not commit to the extravagance. The droll yet tender nature of the novel is joyously summed up by this passage from page 183, where the servant girl Martha won't leave Miss Matty even though she can no longer afford to pay her. This scene is quite touching, but at the same time it includes this great line from Martha: "I'll not listen to reason. Reason always means what someone else has got to say." The Cage at Cranford was written 10 years after the original and has none of its wit or charm, and Smith is now the butt of the joke rather than the wry observer. The affection of Cranford is lost, and the description shorn of Smith's wry observations and affectionate mockery seems almost spiteful in comparison. Compare these passages, the first from Cranford, the second from The Cage at Cranford. Miss Pole herself, whom we looked upon as a kind of prophetess from the knack she had of foreseeing things before they come to pass, though she did not like to disturb her friends by telling them her foreknowledge. This first is wry, it's tongue-in-cheek, it's astutely observed, and at stark odds with the description from The Cage at Cranford of Miss Pole's new help as her stupid little servant maiden. The harsh treatment of the help is furthered on page 336. Miss Pole turned on her with almost as much vehemence as the cook had done, only in choicer language. It is also compounded by the knowledge the reader has that the help is correct and Miss Pole and the narrator are wrong. They do say never go back for a good reason. Cranford would have been better left well alone because the book, as originally published, is really enjoyable. It's clever, it's emotional, it's hugely engaging in a way that a book without car chases, grisly murders or dragons has any right to be. I definitely should not have enjoyed this book as much as I did. I highly recommend it, but particularly to fans of Stockett or Kinsella who will appreciate its genuine warmth for its subjects and Gaskell's easygoing narrative. Thank you for listening. Feel free to check out some of the other videos on the channel. I'll see you in the next one.